young lady that I have the privilege of talking to today, and we're going to get into her story about how she got started in the film industry because it is extremely interesting. But without further ado, welcome, Chrys Phillips. How are you?
Oh, hi. I'm so pleased to be on this podcast. I was looking forward to it and I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Floyd.
That's good. That's good. So, something that I always like to ask my guests when they first come on is, how did you actually get started in the film business? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So other than the usual story that people say, "Oh, I've always wanted to do it from when I was little." Well, yes, but it never worked out that way. Life had a different agenda. But what happened was probably about 15 years ago. I used to work part time on sets in Australia, so there was jobs like get coffee, help with props, those sort of jobs. And then 15 years ago or to 12 years ago, I had done my first book that had went popular all over the internet and whatnot. And then I came to America. And what happened was when I came to America, I had a couple of things happen with the book, and I had to rush back home to Australia, and I had found out my manager at the time had all the copyright, so I couldn't continue doing for my book. So I was devastated because these were my characters, and then I started thinking, web series are so popular. Maybe I'll just do my own web story series and tell stories that way. And then from that one pilot that I created, it flew me into Amazon's, saw me because we had 1 million viewpoints, and then I went and continued my career as a director and writer in TV and film.
Now, wait a minute. Let's back up. So,
Yeah,
you said your manager had all of your copyrights. So,
yeah.
they copywrote all your work, so none of it belonged to you anymore?
Yeah, it was devastating. Oh, this bit of hair here is bothering me. It was devastating. I had got all ready to have it. We had like 1 million ebooks were sold. It was like on the top of everything. And then when I left because you got to go, for different visa things you got to do. And I left. I was like, oh, I want to do this for my book. And I had like a legal letter saying you don't own the copyright. And then I had to get a lawyer in Australia to look at it, and somehow my signature was on this form that said I gave up all the copyright to this beloved, book series. And then I spoke to my legal, and he said, "You won't have enough money to take these people down. Just consider it gone and do something else." So I was devastated. Thought, well, I can still tell stories. They can't take that from me. So I started a web series. It turned into a leading TV show on Amazon and Apple, and then I get a phone call after the first season of the show, and they said, "Oh, the American counterparts of our office have called me. You've got all the rights back. They've just disappeared. We don't know where they are, what they're doing, what happened." And I had lost momentum though, so I'd lost all the fan base for the newsletters and the websites and the books. But yeah, it came back within a year, which was like, it was kind of like a miracle, to tell you the truth, because a lot of these things never come back. But yeah, that's what happened.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're going to circle back to that because I want to touch on the business aspect of the film business that a lot of people don't really hone in on. And, I guess someone, like yourself at that particular time, uh, just didn't know or think about the importance of copywriting. So I want to go back to that a little bit later,
Okay.
but I want to talk about your childhood because again I did some research and finding out that growing up was a challenge. How did you turn that into an advantage, which ultimately led to where you are now?
Well, that's a very good question. And you know what's really interesting about you asking me that is that you don't think you're doing anything at the time to survive something or get out of something. Do you know what I mean? Like, you constantly feel like you're treading water. But the main thing that would have been in my mind was, and I don't know where this came from and how it's instilled or how you can aspire to it, but I do a lot of public speaking I've done for youth over the years, is that I started to, I was, I felt victimized with the abuse. So you do, and you start not to tell people because it's like, oh, it's weird. I don't want them to not want to play with me or hang out with me because it's weird. And then I started to look at these people from a different point of view instead of fear. I looked at it as in, no, you're not going to win. So I decided from a young age that, yeah, well, I'm not going to cry and I'm not going to let you tell me what I am or what I'm going to do. So I think, I don't know how that happened. So that's a hard thing to explain, but something inside me was like, don't let anything define you, which is on all my motivational team books. And it was like, I'm going to go and do what I want to do. You're not going to define me. So I think that helped me. I would look at them like fools
Mm.
instead of a perpetrator. And it kind of helped me to get that I can do this. And then as you get older, you start to think, well, I've been to hell and back, so I can go and do this, you know? So you get like a tougher shell. But it doesn't mean that a lot of people then think, oh, you're so fiercely independent, you know, especially like dating or something like that. But the thing is, like, I didn't want to be born and be independent and fiercely independent. You should be saying to me, that's cool. So I think when you say, how did you get out of that? I cannot pinpoint what made me get that feeling or that thought, but it was basically sink or swim. And I decided to look at the situation different as a young girl and then decide I'm going to go and do what I've got to do. And I just kept every day, you know, getting through it till I could get out of it.
Hmm. Yeah, this is this gentleman that I listen to. He's very huge in the personal development space, Ed Milet.
Mm,
And he has this saying, I don't know if it's his or if he just coined it. He says, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And he talks about sometimes even the worst thing
mm,
that is happening to you is actually happening for you because now you're a best-selling international author, screenwriter, director, and it's all tied to
mm.
what didn't happen to you, but
Yeah.
what happened for you. Didn't look like it at the time,
No.
but would you be who you are as a writer and as a director if that hadn't happened for you, do you think?
Probably not. If I had had like a proper, not I mean proper, that's cliche, but if I had had someone there to say, yeah, go and finish your law degree, or I'll help you with that, or whatever had happened, I lost lots of opportunities and scholarships and things. I probably would have been a lawyer by now or a vet or something that I was aspiring to do, and that would have been it. You know, lived my life, probably got married, you know, all that kind of thing. But I think, yeah, this made me be totally cylindrically detached because there wasn't really a network. So you're kind of a little bit, for lack of a better joke, a gypsy soul. And you just think, well, where am I going next? Well, I've always wanted to go to America. And so when the book series was like selling crazy in Europe and America, that's when I first came over for like WizardCon and Comic Con and, you know, stuff like that. And then, yeah, by that getting taken off me, I then went and followed my passion of storytelling with film and TV. So, yeah, kind of, I guess also you've got to learn that when something's like a closed door, it doesn't mean that you can never find a way around it or go a different way. Like people just stop and maybe self pity too much, but you've got to think, all right, well, what can I do that is adjacent to that or can assist me to that? Or was that really what I wanted? Or is this what I really want? So I always step back and analyze, and I don't let anything define me. But I think I may analyze more than the average person because I had to fit in everywhere I was passed from one house to the other. And you learn to like, oh, what will this people want me to act like? Or what's this situation like? So from a young age, you've developed a different skill set on reading people's characters. So it was a different way to grow up for sure. But, you know, it is what it is. But I probably would have been like a vet, marine biologist, or a lawyer, the things that I got on my scholarships for.
Hmm.
But I love telling stories. So I'm so pleased I'm telling stories.
So with you moving around and as you just said, people wanting you to fit in to their particular situation at the time,
Yeah.
has that taken a part in how you write your characters in your books and or your films?
That's yes. And you know, that's yes, yes, and yes. And you know, when I'm writing and when I first started, I had a lot of books before Magic Wars, the book series that went, you know, popular. But I look at the characters like Mortyler or Xavier or the teenagers or even some of the villains. and I have that approach of why they're doing it or why were they inhumane or what was happening. But I do think a lot of my experience have nuances in the humanity of the layers of the characters for sure.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about you and naysayers,
Mhm.
because that was huge for me. Because I'm a big believer in having the naysayers fuel me. So can you talk about that, because you talk about not allowing naysayers to define you. Why is that so important to you?
I think that's really important to me because when I was growing up, I was always like, you know, the outsider or not popular, or there was always gossip around me, or you're passed around like excess baggage. But I'm not blowing my own trumpet here with ego, but I was more better at school. I was better at things than these people who were telling me that I wasn't. And I could see, well, hang on, this is what I'm doing. And so I I got angry as a kid. I guess you get angry. And I thought, well, you can't keep telling me I'm not when I can see I am. So, and I think that's a sad thing for some people who don't see from young, because maybe their emotional status was different to me, or whatever you've inherited. And I think a lot of people can't see their worth because of that. And has that affected me? Cool. Of course, it's affected me in other relationships or other avenues in my life where you don't feel worthy of people to think you're good enough for
Mhm.
things. Yeah, of course, that comes without say. So I have to think about that a lot, you know. And now that I've gotten to 300 years old, I'm not going to say my age, but I'm trying now to be like, hey, I can take better care of myself. It's okay. I don't have to keep the warrior outfit on, and that kind of thing. But naysayers are usually people that were making my sky a ceiling, and that's something I've always felt. And so I wanted to break out of that. And I think when you see people that are constantly, whether it could even be someone that's close to you, it doesn't always mean it's an enemy, so to speak, you know, but it's usually someone who's got their fears and needs to keep you closer for whatever reason they require. So I hope people can see that, and I'm hoping that if I can get to the success that I'm wanting to with my movies and book adaptation, that the story can stretch out more to people to find that inner strength.
You know what? That's so interesting. I've found on my journey that oftentimes when someone says something to you, like, "Oh, Chris, you're writing that little book or you're directing that little film," and they're looking to put their fears on you. One thing that I've found out is it ain't you they're talking about.
Mhm.
It's usually
Mhm.
themselves,
Yeah.
because they cannot see themselves in your situation. They
Mhm.
can't see themselves directing a film. They can't see themselves writing multiple books. They can't see themselves as a public speaker. So the fact that they can't see it for themselves, they can't see it for you. So they
Mhm.
start projecting that
Yeah.
fear, their insecurities onto you. But that's just an observation. But this podcast is not about me, it's about you.
No, but you're
So
right. No, you're 100% no, Floyd, you're right. And they don't stop. Like people think, oh, Chris is up to her fourth book, or yeah, I still got people telling me you're an idiot for what you're doing. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. So you just gotta go, okay, well, cool. But I'm doing me. So you know.
but you know what? You're an idiot, but you're a happy idiot. I hate to put it like that, but you're a happy idiot,
Yeah,
because how many of us walk through life miserable because we're not doing something that
yeah.
we actually love? So if I'm going to be an idiot, can I at least be a happy one?
Yeah.
So I mean,
And look, and honestly, Floyd, you're right. Because it's like, I didn't just wake up one morning and this will happen either. So I've done heaps of jobs from 15 years old. I've been working that I didn't want to do. Like, you do what you got to do to pay bills. Or I remember not even having food with the person that was meant to take care of me, and going to a local cafe, a bakery in Balaclava, Melbourne, and they would give me their leftover breads and things, and I would live on coffee scrolls or whatever to get my next job. Or so, I've done a lot through that, but at the end of the day, no one can tell me if I can do something or not, because you're not me. And that's what a lot of youth don't see. And I try to do that. And I hope, I do what I do with my film and my books so people who don't like to read can see the film and find that inner strength, even though it's covered and masked in like magic and immortality and that fun adventure. It's all about all these mortals or immortals finding some type of inner humanity or strength,
So you speak to a lot of youth.
Before COVID, I used to do a lot of different public space speaking. Like I did lots of schools in California, from Redondo down to Newport, and I did a few online to Germany and Asia, and I did heaps in Australia when I was living there. So yeah, I did a few of those, and it's just I don't know. I can imagine, like, in this day and age too, it's different with social media, because not only if you're going through some type of hardship at home where you're meant to be nurtured, you then go on social media and everyone looks luckier than you. So it's not as bad as seeing it at school or down the street or on TV. And now every time I put my phone on, oh, this girl or boy's got more than me, or and I think there's a lot of hope gone. Just a bit of hope in, like, things can change. You don't have to be this to be that, you know?
Yeah, and I was gonna you kind of answered the question that I was going to ask you. Do you find that a lot of young people, and they've done studies on this, are affected by the facade of social media, and you have to be really strong, even as an adult.
Mm,
You have to be really strong to deal with the barrage of social media, because even myself, and I've been at this for a very long time, sometimes I'll look and I'm like, really? Really? And I have to catch myself, because I'm like, you know what, Floyd, that's their representation.
mm.
That's oftentimes not the real them. So when you're speaking to the young people and you're imparting that, are they hearing what you're saying when you're saying, hey, you are capable of doing certain things, and if you see images on social media, don't take that too seriously, because that is just a representation of who someone might be.
Yeah, I think with what you're saying, it doesn't hit everybody. I don't think everyone listening to me, some of them were like, oh, that's a great story. That's really cool. Like, they're all interested and they're
Mhm.
all captivated by it and want to know items of it. But I think predominantly it's the ones that are at that crossroad. You have to get to some type of emotional crossroad to listen or hear something. Otherwise, it's just white noise. So I think there is a minority or majority listen, the minority and majority that aren't ready.
Okay. So let's talk about the fact that you are an award-winning writer and director. So what is your first series about? I'm sorry, I had the name written down, but I
That's
cannot
right.
find it.
The
What
book
was the
series.
name, the fantasy book? Because I'm a big fan of fantasy.
Oh,
Just to let you
cool.
know, I am a huge Tolkien fan.
Mm, me
Morcott,
too.
all of those guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's my favorite. So what is your series about?
Okay, so magic. So I'm a big fan like you. I grew up obsessed with comics and all these sort of things. Magic Wars, I wrote it when I first started, was to do like a really an enjoyable, simplistic read that you can like expand your horizon and escape to whenever. You didn't have to, like, oh, I've got to open this book and read 10 pages, because some books you've got to really concentrate. So I wrote it for that. And what it's about is basically you and I now, here we are, we're talking on this podcast. Are you an immortal? Have I been gifted with something? Is there an inner strength of either of us? What's happening around us in our local town? So basically, the veil drops in the town due to the third moon's eclipse and the revenge of a woman scorned by her man. Ooh, don't scorn a woman.
No, don't do
Yeah,
that.
but it's all fun and a bit of fun. But what happens is that the veil is dropped, and the immortals that have been hidden since the dawn of time are now coming back to take what they feel is theirs. So the magic wars, so to speak, begin. There's no vampires, werewolves, wizards, or anything like that. It's characters that will thrill you and scare you. So there's some characters who make a deal to have revenge on someone, but the deal
Mm.
isn't what it should be, and they turn into some monstrous black winged woman with talons that licks her blood red lips, constantly chasing you know, her humanity and where she's going to find it. And then you've got like the sexy Zenmore brothers that everyone's obsessed with, these two brothers that have literally sold the books, but they live in a story of not knowing their identity or their parents or why they are what they are and why they have to go through what they're going through. So basically it's, yeah, the veil drops and you're on an adventure and quest of different immortals clashing with everyday life and how humanity has to be saved. But they have their own level of, humanity they have to find as well.
Okay, so what age group did you write this series for?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question because around the world, everyone has given it a different age, but it's called young adult, which is like, say, Twilight or Harry Potter, the same age group. But all around the world, it starts from a different age. Like Europe will start at 10. I think America starts 13. Australia's 12. And other parts are 15 plus. But there's nothing in it that's untoward. So, you could read it at 10 and enjoy it.
Oh, okay.
But
So
it's got mature followers as well. Like, there's a lot of women that are obsessed with the characters that read it too. So it's not written childish.
oh, very, very nice. But I want to talk about making the deal.
Yeah.
Who did they make the deal with?
Okay.
If you can divulge that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I have found, right, that there's always someone that's going to come to you and say, "Oh, look, I can help you out with this, and I can get this. I can solve all this and do all this."
Mhm.
And will say to you things like, "Well, do you think you should be, Chris, living the way you're living or what you've gone through? I mean, what type of, humanity's out there for you, whether they're talking about a religion or a person or spirituality." And so this person and people that I have met over time will be like, "I'll solve it, I'll give you all this." So, and usually it's like, yeah, I kind of will do it on my own, thanks. That's my capacity of that energy. But
Mhm.
I thought, well, let's put this in the book where Zenmore, who is the warlord of the damned, he's like the most evilest character. Well, we think he is when the book story starts. He's very evil. He finds this woman who is like devastated about losing someone. I can't go into too much detail what happens. And he says, "Look, I can help you out. I can help you getting back. How dare someone do this?" It's all that compassion that she's feeling. I need this compassion. I'm broken. And she ends up turning into this hybrid morphed creature.
Mhm.
And she's like, "This isn't what I wanted. I need to get the guy." And he said, "Well, you wanted power, you wanted revenge. I've given you everything you can have." So her journey goes throughout the series. Raven is the character, and she then starts meeting a person who's on the right side, and there's this like forbidden attraction between them. But she's got to find that instead of keep thinking she's a monster, she's not a monster, and maybe that'll heal her. So there's like a story of how to heal a bad decision that she made, a bad deal.
Wow. So and it's so interesting because oftentimes in books and movies, when you're offered a deal that's too good to be true, oftentimes it is. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I was watching a film. My wife and I, we were watching this movie the other day, and it basically, ancient times, Loki, the Norse gods,
Mm.
and this king wanted his brother's kingdom. He ends up getting it, but he doesn't keep it. And the brother says to Loki, he said, "But you told me you'd make me king and I'd have this kingdom." And Loki said, "But I didn't tell you for how long."
Yeah, right.
And that's how deals usually work.
Yeah,
I'll give it to you, but I didn't say you'd have it for years. I didn't say you'd have it for, but you just said you'd give it to me, and I did.
yeah,
And that sounds like that's what the gentleman in your book did. Oh, I'll give you what you want, kind of, sorta, but
yeah.
it's not going to be what you think.
No,
So let's talk about your. Wow, I lost my train of thought. Your personal development book. Wow, that never happens. Your
that's
personal
right.
development, because there's so much I want to
Yeah,
ask you.
okay.
But your personal development book, um, never say can't.
Yeah.
Why did you write that?
Oh, Okay. I wrote that a long time ago, probably just after the first ebook of Magic War. So it's a long time ago. And
Mhm.
I wrote that because I was sitting in a place in Australia where I was starting to do something I wanted. And I wasn't in my 20s and I wasn't young, but I had stuck it and believed in myself that one day I'm going to finish a book and I'm going to do this. So I had a lot of people back then on Twitter who would, because Twitter was huge, that would come on and we'd have the characters tweeting, and they would tell the characters a lot of their issues or a lot of things they were going through. And when that we had like actors that were the characters, and then a
Mm,
lot of people they would send me these, and I thought, wow, there's so much um, sadness in people, and they're reaching out to these characters because it felt real.
mm,
Felt real. So I decided that to do a book called Never Say Can't. And at the time, I was talking to Ian Somerhalder, who was on the Vampire Diaries, and his managers who started back then the Ian Somerhalder Foundation. And I said, I've got this book. And they said, well, we're looking to help our foundation. And do you have anything about that? And that's how it all came about. I was starting the book. They were looking for a book, and it kind of like, meshed together and it came out. And from that book, Never Say Can't, was when I started doing more of the public speaking, and I did all that. That was all for free. I never charged for the public speaking or anything like that. It was just to give back and, hopefully, it helped someone or two.
okay, and I'm sure it did, but I want to go back to something that you said very interesting and is really heavy. You said that people were writing to the characters as if they were real.
Yeah.
So, as someone who is an avid reader and a screenwriter himself, the characters are real.
Yeah.
And a lot of people find solace in these characters. And sometimes those characters are the realest people that they actually know. Kind of
Mhm.
like the movie Misery.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Exactly.
right. You're going to kill them off. You can't do that. And another, I don't know if you like Star Trek, but when Spock died,
Oh, yeah.
when Spock died, because I'm a huge Trekkie, when Spock died, that really did something to me. So
Yeah.
when
It's
you
the
talk,
end.
yeah, when you talk about your fans writing to these characters as if they're real, they actually are real. But
Yeah.
let me ask you this.
They're real to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to be real for me to write with a true voice.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just writing, and that's the big thing when people go, I'm a writer. But if you don't write with a true, if you don't have something you can relate to that character, it's not going to be real. It's just a read. So every character has a nuance that I care about or like, So I have killed off some characters, but and some people are like, "What are you doing?" But in hindsight, I haven't had big complaints because when you get to the third installment, you see, oh, okay, this is for a reason for this particular character. So a lot of people will constantly still now either email or Goodreads or DM, just don't kill Xavier, don't kill. So he's the main character of the
Okay.
series. I'm not taking that poor young man anywhere.
So do your characters talk to you?
I think I'm the puppeteer of them more than
Okay.
anything, but I put myself in their place. So you use your imagination and your empathy, and you think, okay, I'm walking in their shoes right now. How would I really react to this other than, oh, this is a perfect written line with syntax and grammar? And I think that's where writers get so overtrained, some of them, and so over lost in their mind that if you're constantly wanting that perfect sentence, then you're not going to feel the voice. And I had a lot of that, Floyd, with my first editor, that a lot of things were taken out that I'm adding more into the adaptation for the film that weren't put in because you don't have a say sometimes because they need to cut it down to a certain size. And but now I've got more freedom and I keep that freedom for my writing. But yeah, you've got to walk in the shoes. Otherwise, it's not going to speak to anyone,
Yeah, and that's interesting because no one has a perfect conversation.
No,
You
that's right.
you stumble over words. I mean, a couple of minutes ago, I just lost my train of thought. That's a normal conversation.
That's right. That's got to be in any storytelling. That's one of my biggest. There's a big tip. Any storytelling, make it so you're walking in the steps. Because if you can't walk in the steps, then no one else is going to walk in their steps. To relate to it.
Yeah, and if you don't write that way, it comes across artificial and you can spot it immediately,
Yeah.
especially if you're someone who reads a lot,
Yeah. True.
and it kind of takes you out. I guess what I'm saying is if they're not human, even if they're not human, kind of like in your magic series, they're human, but then they're not. But they have a humanity.
Yeah.
And if they don't have a humanity, you're like, this is so one dimensional. I'm not
Yeah.
interested in it.
Yeah. And the characters don't complain about having immortality. Like that's the one thing I always think. Like I'm a nerd, so I follow all the different, the whole, Marvel things. Grew up with all those things as well. Star Trek, Star Wars, all of that. But the one thing I always on modern day literature, they're like, oh, I don't want to be a vampire. I don't want to have this. Well, you got kind of a gift. Use it. So I feel like that would annoy me in some things, like because wouldn't we all want some type of different thing that we could use? So I'm not saying that I'm not delving into every character because of the bloodlust with vampires and all that, but I'm just saying like so what happens with a lot of my characters is that they're not sitting around complaining about it. They're looking of how to either better it, solve it, or move forward. And they have lots of trials and tribulations, especially Xavier. He goes through a lot. And a lot of what he goes through is probably a little bit reflected on my childhood, but in how he rises above different things. So they don't complain.
Hmm, okay. So let's talk about you being a woman and basically a male dominated industry on both sides of this fence,
Yeah.
in the literary world and in the film world. So, what are some of the things that you've learned when it came to being a woman on a film set or as an author when you were putting out your books?
Okay. Film set, first of all, I'm not going to mention anything, but certain projects I would have people, men take like if we're filming outdoors and they got like a cap on. I've had men take their cap off and throw it at me, literally throw it at me. Like you're being can't say the word. Starts with B, and you want this and you want that. And but if I was a man saying, "Hey, look, let's get down the ground and try and get the feeling of the wind that's blowing through," or they would be, "Yeah, man, that gotcha." But when as a woman, I was demanding or I was asking too much. So I have experienced that type of um, experience with different males that don't want to take direction from a female director. And I've experienced others that are just like, oh, let's do this. I'm fascinated with the story. I love this. Let's do it. So there's a bit of both. But I think the one thing you learn, you got to have such a tough skin. Otherwise, you probably will crawl under your bed and go, I don't want to go out in the world anymore and get picked on. So you've got to kind of be like, I want to do this for me and for you've got to have a passion for it, and that's it. If you're doing it for fame chasing or because someone told you to do it, it's hard. It's really hard. And you have to, as a woman, go, I'll do my own project and I'll get people on board who want to work with me. So even though I've worked on a lot of projects, I do tend to now look at doing things myself as much as possible.
So let's go back to the hat throwing. So
Yeah,
now
that
were you the director on the set or were
happens.
you just a part of the crew?
No, I was the writer and director, and the person filming at the time lost it and threw it at me, and everyone just stood there, and it was like this really like I held my breath for a couple of seconds and handed him back the hat, and then I told everyone to take a break, and I got an apology at the end of filming because it helped everyone's careers. But at the time of filming, yeah, I was obviously coming across to him that a woman was telling him how to get a shot that he's never taken or he didn't feel was right. So yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. But
So
I had to hold back.
okay. So did that affect the shoot, or were you able to basically keep the ship on course?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, like for a couple of days, it didn't matter how much I motivated everyone or came in the same. I think people were waiting for something to happen,
Mm,
and they felt a shift in power. And I didn't want them to feel that he had the power of the story, because it was my film, my story. So I didn't engage in gossip. I didn't engage in making it bigger than what it was. And I just kept being fun and had jokes and just said, oh, yeah, we all have bad days. Let's move forward. And I left it at that. Because if I had given it energy, I think we would have ended up in a real, a real situation. But by the end of it, the person apologized, which was nice. But in that moment, it was like, oh, you're such a bee, telling me to do this and that. I've been doing this for so long. It's going to be shot this way. And I said, yeah, but if we shoot it that way, we're getting in. There was like a sign, that you couldn't get. But if we shoot down here where the wind's blowing and it looks pretty, like it had a nice cinematic appeal, I was my direction for the scene. But yeah, so
so going forward from that experience, do you set the tone on your film sets before you even yell roll camera? Is there a tone set on expectations of, crew
yeah.
and of yourself? Is that talk had before anyone yells roll camera? Okay, I am the director, I am the executive producer. This is my lane. I'm going to occupy that. You're the DP. I value your opinion, but you're the DP. I'm writing your checks. Not kind of like that, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is there a tone set now when you're on your film sets, so everyone has an understanding of how things are going to go?
Yeah, I would like to not have to set a tone. I would
Mhm,
like to come in and everyone's excited to work. Like if I was a man who had done it the same as what I've done,
mhm.
but you have to set the tone. And the sad part is that there's probably still people out there that were probably like, oh, she told me I had to move this that way, and she told me, and it's like, yeah, but that's my job. See, that's my job, to take us as the head engine and take the train to the other end and succeed. And so I do that on every production, and see what happens with some people. But it's been pretty good, but I have had experiences of it. And I think that's what I'm saying, as a female, you really have to, you can't complain about it and go, oh God, I wish, I didn't, the women, why complain about it? You're not solving anything. Just get out there, tell people how it is, and roll with the punches and get it done. So it's part of being a female for sure. You just got to learn to deal with it, because you can't wave a magic wand literally and have everybody going, yeah, right, it's Chris. Like there are going to people who cast or succeed to be included, but they still have their own agenda, you know?
True, true,
Yeah.
true. So with that, how important is it, and kind of going back to what we were talking about early on with the copyright, how important is it to guard your work and to have the right people on your team?
It's immensely important. So you can't rush. At the moment, I'm wanting to film a prequel. Then, the Magic Wars franchise series has had so many people and studios wanting to do multi-million dollar versions of it. And between COVID and the strike, it just keeps derailing and pausing it for now. And everyone's kind of in a bit of a flurry of what they're doing. So I've decided I want to do a prequel, and I want to film it. It doesn't have to be a high end budget, but something exciting that you get to watch and be introduced to the Magic Wars series. So I want to make sure, without rushing now, Floyd, do you want to come on board? John, Bill, Chris, whoever it is, and they get the mindset of the team spirit to get to the success and the home base and create it. So I'm currently working on that, but not rushing it.
Well, that's really good, and that's one thing that I tell a lot of young filmmakers: don't be in such a rush to go to production.
No.
Make sure you have all your ducks in a row, because once you start,
Mhm.
there's very little room for mistakes and
Yeah.
errors, and that do over is a
Yeah. No,
I'm
so
going
true.
That do-over is a bitch. So you definitely want to take your time. And the thing is, why are you rushing?
Yeah,
Because this is how I like to tell filmmakers. People are consumers, and what you're making is a product for them to consume.
yeah,
So if you look at it from a consumer and a customer standpoint, would you go to any store and buy a rushed product?
mhm,
And if you wouldn't,
exactly.
if you wouldn't buy your car that came off the assembly line in one day, why would you do it to your film? Because you're then turning around and asking someone to take their money
Yeah,
to purchase your rushed product. And if you release a bad product, every time I see Chris, I'm like, I ain't buying nothing else from her because that she put out the first time was I'm not spending my money on
that's
that.
so true. That's so true. So there's no rush, which comes down to getting the right people. I want the right locations and all that type of thing.
Yeah, because you remember anything that's put together well,
Mm,
and you want to go back and purchase from that person again.
for
And
sure.
let's go back to your books.
Yeah,
If your books weren't good, people wouldn't still buy them.
right,
Because I've read some stuff and I'm saying to myself, that's time I can never get back.
right.
If I even, and sometimes I'll read, I'm like, I'm going to do it because I bought the book. And then sometimes I'm like, you know what? I can't, you know what? I just made a donation to someone. Good luck with it, but I can't because this is crap. So it is what it is. But let's talk about you being in this business because it's a difficult business. So, what are 3 to 5 rules or beliefs that keep you grounded?
Okay, so three rules: writing or storytelling. Let's do storytelling because it's film and book.
She,
But
oh, you
three rules.
froze. You froze. You
Oh,
came
did
back.
I?
You're back. You're back now.
Okay.
That
Um,
happens when it's live.
it's the internet. I know. It's probably because it's really windy here outside.
Okay.
There's a storm coming.
Oh boy.
3 rules for storytelling, I'd say, because that's film and book. You
Hmm.
know, 3 rules. The first one would be um, you've got to love it. And I mean not, oh yeah, I love it. Are you loving it out of ego or fame? If you love it out of passion, that it makes you want to get back and do it every 2 minutes, that's your first rule. It has to feel like that. Otherwise, you're going to have a long, long, terrible journey doing it. So you have to not go for fame or ego. It's got to be a passion. That's your first rule. Your second rule is to create something that gives something back. It's got to give something back. Otherwise, as a storyteller, what am I doing? So it has to give something back. And then the third thing would be, how am I changing anything of my journey and anyone else's journey coming on part of this? So I think I look at it all that way. There's no rule for how much am I going to make and what am I going to do. But that'd be my 3 main rules.
Those are very good rules.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Those are very good rules to live by. And you know what, Chris? I've been in this business for 19 years, and I can't tell you how many times I said I'm done with it, and that lasts for about a week. But I can't put it down
Mhm.
because it's in my blood.
Yeah,
Because if I
that's
walk
right.
away from it, it kind of starts calling
Hmm.
like, hey Floyd, hey Floyd, hey Floyd. It starts, and then you may go online and you see something, and you be like, I was just having a bad day. And
Hmm.
and then you plunge back in it because again, like you said, you have to love it. And if you're
Hmm.
loving it because you're trying to get rich, then maybe you need to go love something else.
Yeah. Yeah, because don't go into the arts.
No,
I just want to
maybe.
tell stories. I have a lot of stories. There's so many stories that I can't make or write, but I've been considering publishing like scripts as well for people just to have a fun read. So I just like to tell stories. And I think that's a big thing about me because of how I grew up. So telling stories is my to do.
Wow, yeah. So you said you moved here once and then you moved here twice. And reading an article, and I want people to understand what you did because you said you sold everything
Mhm.
to move back here.
Yeah. twice. Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because my desire for what I wanted to do outweighed my fear. So my fear wasn't I'm going to fail. My fear, if I had it, would have been what if I never do it? And so I remember driving around Melbourne, and this news report came on Fox FM radio, and they said the Australian dollar is now the same in the history of time level to the American dollar. And I was like, say what? I nearly like my car. I was like, what did I hear? And I went home, got on the computer, and my daughter came home from school, and I said, that's it. I'm selling everything from the garage to the car to everything. Let's do a big yard sale. And we had nothing over $5 yard sale. And everyone thought I was crazy in my street for sure. And that gave me the slush money to come the first time. But I remember sitting in a diner in, what's the Studio City? And I'm sitting there eating this carrot cake with my daughter. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm in Los Angeles. So, geez, what am I going to do? I don't know anybody. So, yeah, when I got to America, it kind of hit me in the head, but it was fine. I landed on my feet. I networked. I did what I had to do. But then when COVID came, I had to go back, and there was no work. And I was like, I need to go back. I felt like I was in that TV show Lost. We had no
Hmm.
planes. Couldn't get back. And then I sold everything again. I did it again, and then I'm back. So yeah, my desire to be here was so much. I had so much faith in what I wanted to do that it outweighed any fear.
Yeah, and you know what? Oftentimes people are afraid of that leap.
Yeah,
And the leap will sometimes hurt, but I
yeah,
think not taking the leap will hurt a hell of a lot more
yeah,
because there's always that what if.
yeah, yeah,
And, a lot of people that I listen to in personal development, they always talk about you don't want to leave here with a lot of what ifs because what if you succeed? I
yeah,
always say this to people. There's a 50-50 chance of it working if you try it.
yeah,
But there is a 100% chance of it not working if
yeah,
you don't.
yeah,
So if you went to the stock market right now and said to a stockbroker, "Hey, I have a stock. And if you invest this amount of money, there's a 50% chance that you could become a billionaire if you invested in that stock." Everybody's taking that offer.
yeah,
But oftentimes in our everyday life, when you're presented with something like that, people are like, "No, I'm okay. I'll stay here." And that thing is waiting on the other side of that.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, you're so right. And heaps of people would say to me, like in my street, you're not that young. Like you need to keep something for when you get older. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to get older, and I didn't do it now. Like I'd rather do it now than tackle that then. Anyone was like crazy, and like you don't have your, you're not gonna have your home, and you're not gonna all these things. And I'm like, well, I grew up never having a home, so maybe it was a bit easier for me. So I think if you're brought up a little bit more secure, I think it's harder. So I'm not being flippant about it because I can understand for some people that's your life. Like that's what you're used to. Whereas for me, I was a rolling stone. So it's probably a little bit easier in that sense.
Hmm. So Chris, how important to you is branding?
Branding is important for everything. And I think and this, look, really, if you want to brand a product, we've got to be honest as well. You need some backup, financial backup. But you can brand something to a level of professionalism or to a level of fanship and having your fans and watching your own disposition, especially in social media. But to brand to a level that you want a synonymous flag waving appeal, yeah, I think you need some cash.
Wow, wow, wow. So Australia, Los Angeles, how has the building of relationships here and back in Australia or allowed or helped you in being successful? Because in my opinion, you are successful because success has
Thank you.
levels.
Yes.
So how has the building relationships at home and home here now helped in you being as successful as you are at this stage?
That's a good question. I think the relationships in Australia have become better since I'm here.
Mm,
Because when I was there, I was constantly told this show's not commercial, it's too Americanized, this isn't that, this isn't that. If you get 1 million views, we'll fund the next season. If you do, the list just kept going on. I did everything, never got funded,
mm,
but America saw what I was doing, so it helped. I had a fan base. So I think now that they've seen me do other things, they will come over and say, "Oh, what have you got going on for us to stream? What's happening with you?" So it's funny that not being at home for some way has developed better relationships for me with Australia. But building relationships here, a lot of the people have moved on from before the strike, and that I used to with COVID. And I remember the first time I arrived in America, I was walking around. This is where I built up people, so I'm getting to something. But I was walking around Marina Del Rey, and there's a little village there. I forget what it's called, and looked like there was all these cameras, and they were filming. And I was just sitting there with my daughter on the bench there, and I thought, gee, we're going to ask us to move. But how exciting is this? An American filming. It's so bigger than Australia. Anyway, this gentleman turned the corner, and he said, "Oh, are you an Australian accent? I just heard your accent." And I said, "Yeah." And I made really good friends with the sound engineer of the TV show Revenge. And I don't know if you remember the TV show Revenge.
mhm,
And the funny thing was, here I was in Australia. I had sold everything. I was on a sleeping bag on the floor watching this show on a laptop. I turn up to LA and I'm on the location they're filming. So I didn't have, I couldn't work in the industry at the time because it was more for my books, but I started building a network and finding out what I needed to do to go from book to TV or film in America. So in hindsight, I think it all just comes down to just being open to opportunities and you're ready to do the hard work. There's a lot of hard work.
yeah. So what would you tell any young person deciding that this is what they want to do, and you're a two-pronged threat because again you're a best-selling international author and you're an award-winning filmmaker. So if you were talking to some young people and they're like, Chris, I want to write and I want to make films and I want to get into the business, what would be your advice to this young lady or young man?
Okay. My advice to them first of all would be practice, practice, practice. In the sense of not spend 100 years doing that. But if someone tomorrow says to you, I'm filming this pilot and I've got a limited budget, but I can pay you for your gas or your craft services, come on board and be a DP or be a AD, take it. Get the experience on set with someone. Don't be like, no, I need to earn X amount of dollars. Find a way to do it. Do a different job at night. Sacrifice one thing to make another thing. Because if you work with different people, you will learn more and build up skills than just what you've learned in school or through YouTube or what you think has to be done. So you make and take the choices and opportunities given to you is the biggest thing. That's the only way to survive. I have friends that are like Emmy winning and that have worked on TV shows like Revenge or Lost, and they still go and do jobs to help mates and do something else just for cultivating and expanding the experience because they're going to use different drones or they're going to use this different location, and then it gives them more skill set for their own project. So I think with this type of industry, you've got to be tough skinned, determined without ego, and take on opportunities, paid or not paid, to get you to learn, to then be at a level where you can stand taller to do what you got to do.
And those are phenomenal points, but you said something that stood out. Emmy award winning friends going to work on someone else's projects.
Mhm.
And if anyone has listened to this podcast, or you will be listening in the future, 54 minutes in, we've talked about some phenomenal things, but 54 minutes in, listen to that over and over again. And here's why. The fact that people at that level and that skill set and that are that accomplished will go and work on someone else's set goes back to what we talked about earlier about building relationships,
Mhm.
because that is a coin that you can cash in at any time. Would
Mhm.
you agree?
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the passion to tell stories when you really have it just drives you to follow things like that. It's like you said, you it calls you. So if tomorrow someone said to me, Chris, I want you to film in, I'm making it up. I'm making this up. Like we're going to film in Chicago and you get to work with blah, blah, but the budget's cut out. But do you want to come on and do X amount? I'd be like, yeah, but there's a lot of that, even though people don't talk about it. But it probably, when you're looking in hindsight, Hollywood, well, no, well, they're all at, Sony Studios or they're all at whatever. But there are people like that were on some of the TV shows. I'm not going to say any names that went off to do their own shows, and the cast and crew went and helped.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, a good friend of mine out in Los Angeles, when they were shooting a particular show that's pretty popular on television now, when they first started out, there was no money,
Hmm.
but they all believed in the show,
Right.
and they said, "We're gonna rock out with this. We don't need any money because we believe in the show."
Yeah.
And now they're all on television
Yeah. I
on
believe
that
that.
show.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. And I think a lot of times people in this business, and we should all want to get paid, but
Yeah.
sometimes you get paid in different ways,
That's
which
right.
will lead to
Yeah.
the check.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before we go, because I have a couple more questions. You did a show on Amazon with your daughter.
Hmm.
Can you talk about that?
Counterplay or the TV show?
The television show.
Yeah. Counterplay. It was called
Yes,
Counterplay.
yes.
Yeah, that was the what I did. Okay, so that was when I like, oh, you've lost your books, and I was like, oh my god, no. And then I was like, what am I going to do? And someone said to me, you can still tell stories. They can't. No one can take that from you. So I said to Michaela, I said, we're back in Australia. If I can find X amount of locations, why don't we do a web series? And I don't know how to do. I know I've worked in TV. I worked on sets, but we don't have all that budget or equipment. So we did. I said, let's do something different. Let's not do crocodiles and kangaroos and the cliche "G'day, mate, crikey, Australiana." And I said, let's do an Australian Gossip Girl, like that type of who done it Gossip Girl in Australia, and show our cities and our fashion. So we went out and made this this pilot and put it on. I think it was Vimeo at the time, and it got like 1.5 million views.
Oh, wow.
And then I had a distributor of Amazon, because we were tweeting it and promoting it. We were excited. And my networks in Australia said, no, you've got to get it onto a platform we won't stream or give you a budget. I said, okay. So Amazon reached out, and then they said, we love it, but you have to refilm it, and you have to film it to this format, this sound, this all this thing. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. So I said, yeah, sure. I wanted it so much. So then I found the right people, made it happen. So Michaela came on board with that because there was only so much I could do as writing, directing, and at the time I was producing more because she was far more a junior, and she played a lead role in that as Faith Morgan. But she then took on a producing role and got together like some fabulous locations for us that were high end, like mansions and nightclubs
Mhm.
that are known in Melbourne. So we escalated by season 2. So yeah, she's very good at producing. She's very good as a producer. So I was glad to work in tandem creating Counterplay, the TV series.
So now, is she actually producing now? Because I know you said earlier that she was out helping scout, if I'm not mistaken. So is
She's,
she actually producing now?
yeah, she's an actress, so she
Okay.
does wherever she gets like some acting gigs, but she's also with people that are creating different film scripts and films and looking for actors and locations. And she can edit. She helps as a producer and comes on board. Not we're not talking about executive producers that have the
Mhm.
finance, producers. So yeah, she's pretty good at it.
She never went to school for it.
She went to school online, but not
Okay.
for film. She did a marketing, degree in between all our travel. So she was finishing her marketing degree and then ended up being in this industry. But she had any choice to do whatever she wanted. But she's a bit of a natural with producing and coming up with really great marketing strategies for what we do. So yeah, it's kind of good. Like, hey,
Okay.
to the
Okay.
family.
Yeah, well, a film producer just gave you the thumbs up because film producer I hope Tone Brown. I hope I am saying your name
Thank
right. I
you.
hope I did not butcher your name. But the reason I asked that question about Michaela is the fact that you don't have to go to school to do this.
Okay, well, that's a very good statement because she learned hands-on. Hands-on from we learned when we first filmed, oh my God, we didn't film for an edit. And the producer that's watching now will know what I mean. So you have quality control and take the shot from the same angle. But if you don't ever sit in an editing room, you really don't know how much you're filming. So we learned firsthand, and she was great because she would be like, oh, we need to cut it there so then we can edit to there. So she learned all those skills. So then when we film, we know how to film for the edit, which takes out reels and reels of film and time, and we have the shots. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, if you've there's some good advice. You want to get into film, sit in an editing suite with an editor and see what it's like for them to mesh scenes together and what's lost and what isn't, and then you need reshoots or retakes. So she's learned a lot being
Okay.
hands on.
So I did say I only had one more question, but see that took me on that. So I got to ask you this. Um, Have you ever had your editor on set with you? Because they say when the film is made three times, when you write it, when you shoot it, and then when you edit it. So have you ever had your editor on set with you watching what was going on? Because again, they have to take it and then basically tell the story
Mhm.
in the editing room. So have you ever had an editor come on the set to kind of get a feel for how the story in the film is actually going?
I had an editor out of my own projects. I had an editor come on for the second season of Counterplay, our TV show. Yes, I did. And they were happy to do that. They wanted to do that.
Mhm.
When we did our film Madison, the Happiness Jar, the editor was quite happy to see what cuts we would go over together. But moving forward to what I want to film now with the preclude, of all the fans to see what happened before the Magic Wars begins, I'm looking currently for an editor who wants to come on set for that because it has such a fantasy element and I don't want it just special effects. I want you to feel that you're there feeling what the character is feeling. So it'd be good to have an editor to see what his skill set is on how to slice and dice, the scenes and mesh it. So I have had an editor come a couple of times and I've had editors not want to be on location as well.
Oh, okay. Well, this has been absolutely amazing, Chris. You're going to definitely have to come back once you go into pre-production
Sure.
so we can talk about everything that's going on. But besides that project that you just talked about, what's next on the agenda?
What's next? What I want to do is to facilitate a production hub and company to help youth learn what to do front and back of camera because so many times people do all these acting classes that haven't acted in anything and they don't really know what we need on set and you're over directing or over micromanaging and they get stressed. So I'd like to have a vehicle where people could come and create with me, even if it was just a short film and it was all their credit and we could create some great content front and back of camera to teach. So that's something I really want to do to help youth out and give them some interest, a non-for-profit. Come on, let's create. Just create, escape your life, learn a skill. So there's that and the film. And of course, I'm constantly writing new script ideas that who knows if they'll ever be done. All these ideas I have and my books. There's a few more volumes coming.
Okay. Well, I definitely have to put you in touch with some of my friends because there are some absolutely amazing. I don't know. You may already know them. there are some amazing women out in LA that I think you guys would get along fabulously.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll talk about that
Mhm,
when we get off
mhm.
air. But this has been phenomenal. And where can people find you? And where can they buy your books? We need to like where can people find your books and buy and watch your films on because you have some stuff on Amazon. So we
Mhm.
need to do all of that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You can follow me on Instagram at Chrys Phillips underscore. So it's Chris spelled with a Y. That's a bit hard. Chrys and then Phillips with a double L. On my website, chrisphillips.com has everything. You can watch everything on Amazon, Apple, BBC, Roku. I think Netflix Australia may still have it. I've got to check. So there's that. And then the books are all on Barnes and Noble and Amazon, and it's called Magic Wars Saga. Not Magic Wars, Magic Wars Saga.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here. Chrys Phillips. Make sure that you follow this phenomenal young lady on all social media platforms. And it's so funny when I put your post up yesterday. This gentleman said, he said, I've never heard of her. I said, well, you know what? Tune in tomorrow, and
That's
this
fine.
will be a great way to get an introduction. So if you've never heard of Chrys Phillips, come on the podcast, sit and listen, learn something. And hey, if you got nieces and or nephews, then you can buy the books. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been absolutely amazing. I had so much fun talking with international best-selling author Chrys Phillips. W what no DGA, not the WGA,
No.
DGA director Chrys Phillips. She has some amazing content out there. Make sure you check it out and please give her a follow on social media because she is going to be doing some absolutely amazing things. And I'm so glad that your public relations person reached out to me and said, you have to have her on your show.
I appreciate this podcast. I've had such a blast with you. I don't really do. You're probably my first podcast. I shy away from press and podcasts, but I probably should do more in hindsight. But Floyd, you've been fantastic. Like you're so cool. You should be coming and filming with me. That's how cool you are. So I've had an absolute blast with you. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I love meeting new people and I love talking and I've made a new friend today, which is
Yes, for
absolutely amazing. Is
sure.
absolutely awesome. And I love the way you say, and it's so funny. I'm listening to you say Australia because and I'm saying, well, we say Australia.
Oh,
So
what did I
that's
say?
yeah,
Australia. Oh,
yeah, we say
yeah. Yeah.
Australia. I'm like, oh, she doesn't say it the way we say it, but she's a native, so she says it the way it's supposed to be said. But that's okay. But ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in, Mr. Brown. Truly appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you listen to it. And if you like the episode, please share it. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps with the algorithm. That stuff, you know how that is. SEO, things like that, and subscribe to the Apple Podcast. But again, before you subscribe to the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to Chrys on Instagram. Make sure that you check out the website and just give it a look. You may see something there that you like. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining myself and Chrys Phillips on a conversation with. And as always, love it like a hobby, but treat it like a business. Everyone have an absolutely amazing, amazing evening.